podcast, Elevate, which is dedicated to living life to the fullest and inspiring, raising up leaders that are going to lead in our homes and our businesses as well as ministry. And my name is Tony Hendley. I'll be your host, and I'm joined here by Pastor Paul Ceccato. And today our session, I'm pretty excited. It's all about how to stay prepared as a leader.
Yes.
How do we grow as leaders? And how do we facilitate growth in organizations where people can raise up to be leaders? We talked about leadership. You know, great leaders is not developing a bunch of followers, but developing leaders, reproducing.
Yes.
So we're going to talk about that. How do we, as leaders, develop a plan of growth? How do we become better leaders? How do we facilitate that? And again, I want to welcome Paul here, and he's going to talk a little bit about that. So think about it. How do we, as leaders, how do we prepare, first of all? How do you prepare as a leader? You know, you started a church here in Bakersfield. You were a youth pastor before that, and you came here. How did you prepare for that, and how did you prepare for the people that were going to come so you could lead them?
You know, the thing is about preparation is you do have to get ready because you're going to need people to make the thing work.
Right.
It's going to take people in order to make the ship run, to run properly. It's going to take necessary components. And the greatest tool that every church has, the greatest asset, but of course your greatest liability too, that's people.
Right.
And so you have to come up with a system that allows you to begin to integrate just new people that either walk through the door or people that have been regular attenders and start integrating them to become, in the process, to get to a place where they can be in a position that will help fulfill roles and help the church continue to grow. So there needs to be a system set in place to do such things.
That's right. So in developing a system to educate, to grow the people that come in, you as a leader, what was your part in that? How did you develop that system, or did you have a specific goal? When people come in here, this is how we're going to grow them. How did you grow yourself?
What I did is I went through much of the material because my passion has always been leadership.
Right.
In fact, it's one of my mainstays as far as my development in my personal life. But then I took that and I said, okay, my core leaders need to know this. Because the biggest part about ministry is that we're all on the same page.
Right.
So if I just told them, look, there's good leadership stuff out there, and they came back with a different leadership concept and an idea, then we would have never really still attained the same goals.
Right.
So how do we attain the same goals? What I need to do is I need to teach what I know and give that to my core group of leaders.
Right.
That core group then in turn is able to now give that to their next group of leaders. And so it's like a snowball effect. So what I did is I developed a system on getting myself to grow. In fact, I tell this to my leaders all the time. I said, you know, if you think you're going to learn more than me, you're wrong, because it's like a race. I'm going to continue to outrun you. I'm going to continue to keep learning and progressing because that's my passion. And so whatever I learn, I give it. So
yeah, that's good. Yeah, it's kind of goes along with the Bible principle, doesn't it? Jesus took 12, he taught them, and then the goal was for them to go out and teach others, right?
That's exactly
right.
right.
So yeah, that's an important aspect. You think about you know, preparation as leaders. I think, you know, we all have a history. We all have something behind us. We have where we came from. We also have our experiences in life, and we also have things we've added to us, you know, through learning, whether it's schooling or it's informal schooling. When I think about preparation, I mean, we're always preparing, aren't we?
Yes.
We're always preparing for whatever is next.
Exactly.
And,
that doesn't get to end. Yeah.
Well, how do you create an atmosphere of learning in your personal life? How do you create that atmosphere of I'm always going to be learning? Give us an idea about that.
You know, John Maxwell talks about keeping growth reminders close by,
Mm-hmm.
and that's exactly what I do. I'm in a situation where I'm blessed to have an office in my house.
Right.
I can't walk by that office without not feeling guilty. No, I mean, if it was for no other purpose than to just keep me feeling, to have that conviction to say, I know I need to be in there right now studying. I know I need to be in there learning, and learning from the tools that I have available to me.
Right.
So what I do is I keep them conveniently close. John Maxwell talks about that in his leadership, and I remember learning that 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. And I've applied that to my life. It's very necessary to keep those growth minders conveniently close to you, because if you don't, It's like anything. We get lazy and we want to go do other things eventually. And so I keep an atmosphere that's constantly in my face, where it either is reminding me or it's putting conviction on me. But nonetheless, there's always something pulling me towards continued growth.
Continued growth. Yeah. It's kind of like the guy that's going to the gym, right? If you pack your gym bag and you put it in your car,
Yes.
put it next to you or as close to you as you can. It's a constant reminder.
It's a constant reminder.
I need to get to that gym.
Yes.
So I guess I better pack mine tomorrow. But
Exactly.
the point is, it's keeping those growth reminders in front of you. That's important.
Yes.
Books.
Books.
But let me ask more specific in this sense. So, you as a pastor, you're leading your church, and how do you design a growth program for yourself in the sense that, you're growing, you're wanting to impart better relationships or community within your church. So you as a leader, you want to grow in that as well first, right?
Yes, definitely.
So how would you implement that? You would have your tools necessary, but what would you do? Would you, is it reading? Is it listening?
Yeah.
How would you design that?
I start off very simple. I'm a very simple guy all in all. I'm not going to be the genius in the room when I walk in, okay? But I'm smart enough to know one thing, is that just create a simple to-do list.
Okay.
And on that to-do list it needs to be a part of your priority.
Yes.
And so when I create that to-do list, there's things that I need to get done in my daily life, but part of that daily life is my growth, the growth portion of my life. Today I need to read. Today I need to study this. Today I need to take time to learn this and look through these things. And usually it's on things that I am in need of in order for personal growth. So I keep those, that in itself is conveniently close,
Sure.
that to-do list.
That's good. That's good. I know in the early days when I first started in ministry, my focus was on the spiritual things.
Mm-hmm.
We shared another podcast, being ministering at a young age in the Lord, so to speak, that for me, it was the first thing was I wanted to grow in that area. That way I could impart that to others.
Yes.
I would buy a book if I would hear the word sovereign God. Well, what does sovereign mean? I'd go buy a book on sovereign. I would study it out.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe it's on faith or whatever it might be. But as time has went on, and we talked in previous podcasts about leadership growth, mentoring, finding specific areas.
Mm-hmm.
Being specific, like you're talking about, a priority list is so important.
Yeah.
I heard a guy say in Bible college that he's scheduled. It's all scheduling. Our time, we don't get it back, do we?
That's right.
And his scheduling was, everybody. He was a young pastor, and he said, everybody wanted his attention first thing in the morning. He said, but I schedule time with God right off the bat.
Yeah.
I schedule time for growth. I schedule time for prayer. I schedule time with my family.
Yeah.
We schedule time with our families. We're encouraged to do that. We need to schedule time with God as well,
Yeah.
as well as growth. And I think that's real important to be very intentional.
Yeah.
And one thing I've noticed over the years is a lot of people aren't as intentional. What I mean by that is there's sporadic growth.
Yeah.
They're just gathering a little bit here, a little bit there, but
Yeah.
they're not a specific area.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about how to prioritize that, how to be specific in your growth, rather than just grab a few things here, grab a few things there.
Yeah. When I was in my early days, one of the things that our pastor had taught us was that we need to prioritize our life.
Mm-hmm.
And what is priority? And I remember, my first one was, God. Now, the interesting thing is about thinking about God is that when I associated God, I associated with ministry,
Right.
not realizing that the two were two separate things.
Yeah, very good.
And so he began to share with us how there's a difference between God first and ministry isn't first.
Right.
And when I understood that there was a difference and a separation between the two, what he did is he helped me put together a priority list. And I'll just share with you like my first top 5. One was God, definitely, because if God isn't priority, the truth is everything that I think that I can do usually falls apart.
Right.
I got to have him in the picture of whatever I do in my life. So I got to go to him first.
Right.
Secondly, because he is my creator.
Right.
He deserves that.
That's right.
But number 2 was me.
Yeah.
And for a long time, I'm like, well, no, my wife's better than I am. And he's like, it has nothing to do with who's better. It has to do with that if you don't give yourself some priority and you say, Okay, it's important that you get in touch with God now. Not just know about Him and read about Him, but you and Him, you need to place that as a priority. All of a sudden I realized that when I got myself in line, it was easy now to handle my next priority and to love it the best, and that was my wife. And then all of a sudden, then it was my children. Then I found out my ministry, in my case, which was my job, was number 5. And that priority list helped me get everything in order, because now when it comes down to it, if one of those priorities try to supersede another, I can say, no, these are the priorities that God's given me, and this one doesn't get to take precedence anymore. This is the way it goes, and that's the order.
I like that. One of the things we teach at Elevate workshops are our values.
Yes.
You know, if we value our relationship with God, that's our number 1 priority.
Yes.
And I like the point that you made of your number 2.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people will say, well, that's being selfish.
Right.
But the reality is, if Paul's not healthy, if Tony's not healthy, then we're not able to. And when I say healthy, I'm talking about our emotionally, spiritually, physically.
Yes.
You know, I have little boys. I have one that's going to be 3 and one that's going to be 1. And health has become more of a priority for me than ever before, because one is I want to be there long term for them.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking of the bigger picture. But number 2 is I want to be able to run and play with them.
Yeah.
You know, I want to be able to enjoy my time with them, and it's not I'm tired all the time.
Yeah.
You know, but if I don't take care of myself, and taking care of myself is that sleep, it's,
Come on.
you know, it's eating right, it's exercise, it's and as far as physical, and then emotionally, you know, I need to take care of myself there as well.
That's exactly
and spiritually. So yeah, I like to prioritize. You know, we look at our values. Our values should determine what we do in life, really.
Yes.
And as far as learning and growing, you know, one thing we do at Elevate workshops is look at, okay, if part of one of the things that I value is growth, okay, because if I'm growing intellectually, the whole, you know, my whole picture, then that's going to better equip me to do my career and my job. So
definitely.
As far as that being a value, then what I do is my daily activities have to align with it, right?
That's right.
You think about vision. Vision is, the Bible talks about that where there's no vision, you know, people perish, but there's another version, I believe it's NIV, that says that they cast off restraint. Where there's no vision or prophetic path we're going on, then they cast off restraint. When I look at that, if I don't have a clear, defined goal, vision of where I'm going, then I'm going to be open to everything else that's going to divert me from what my vision is.
That's right.
And in learning and growing as leaders, we're bombarded with information today, with on TV, on the internet, emails, books, CDs, DVD. There's just so much information out there.
Yeah.
Even in our growth plan, we have to be intentional, don't we?
You know, it's true, because if we don't have a target to aim at, then we really are saying we don't really have a direction in which to go. I always give that analogy to people that when it comes to growing, whatever area that is you choose to grow in, is that that becomes your target.
Right.
But you know how many people will take out a bow and arrow and shoot at nothing? Right. Very few will ever go hunting with the idea of, I just want to shoot in a thin air. No, you go with the intention of shooting at something, or whatever that thing is that you're going hunting for, because that is your intended target.
Right.
It's the same way with our growth. If we go out saying, well, you know what, I feel like a little bit of this today, or I feel like a little bit of that.
Right.
Well, what happens is we're finding that we're not growing. You just got a little bit more information, but you didn't really grow in that. Yeah. So we need to have an intended target in order for us to grow in those things.
Yeah, that's good. An intended target of an outcome.
Yes.
What we expect from our growth. And leadership and learning, it goes hand in hand, doesn't it?
It sure does.
If you're going to be a leader, you have to constantly grow. You have to be aware of your culture,
yes.
You know, what's going on, and even in our organizations.
Yeah.
You know, what's the culture of our organization? I've met so many guys that are blinded that, we have the friendliest organization there is, and they don't, you know, because they're not in tune.
Right.
You know, so we have to learn. We have to know our culture. We have to know our organization, and that's knowing our people, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's getting to know our people, but also in growing. is, learning our trade. If we're a pastor, then we have to be able to lead from the pulpit as well as one-on-one.
That's exactly right.
And it's being able to grow, networking, growing in relationships with the people. When I think, give us some ways, some methods of growth. If you're wanting to grow in your leadership, how would you attack that? How would you look at it? What would be your plan?
My first plan would be one to get that to-do list and prioritize. And remember, leadership is extensive. Yeah. I think a lot of people think that leadership is just that one is not multifaceted. Leadership means I just got to know how to direct people. Right. No, there's different aspects of leadership as far as learning how to control the environment and steer the ship right, so to speak, as well as becoming a person of influence. Right. There are many. John Maxwell wrote the book, The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, and each one gives way to another to some degree. Right. And some people are more advanced in other areas of those laws than others. Yeah. And so they tend to be, what they need to do, if they're more advanced in one, then you need to tend to learn the one that you aren't as advanced in. Right. Because they're all necessary. So what I would do is I would take and learn the ones that I either struggle with or that I'm currently not just as advanced in. Right. And I would pick that. Again, it kind of becomes a target. And from there, I would dissect it. Right. And me, because of the type of person I am, I usually will get to know it so good that eventually I can teach it. There you go. Because it's important to me, though. And not just to know the information, but to be able to give that information to others and apply it to my own life.
Right. Yeah, that's good, is being able to take that information and just grow in it.
Yeah.
It's like in preaching, when you're sharing a sermon, you're sharing a piece of what you studied. Yeah. Ministers should study beyond that. Yeah. When I think about personal growth, and one thing I learned from John Maxwell a number of years ago was that having a personal growth plan and being intentional with it. Yes. In other words, saying this is the target I want to hit, and this is how I'm going to get there. And it might be getting up, for me right now with little boys, it might be getting up a little earlier than I normally would. Yeah. Or staying up a little later than I would, but taking that block of time and saying I'm going to read, or I'm going to. Right now, my job, I'm in my car quite a bit of the time, so it's listening to something all the time. I'm doing a lot of audio books. So it's that. And I think a lot of times, I went back and looked. I have a journal, and we'll do a podcast on journaling. I mean, journaling is so important. Yeah. But I went back and looked at personal development plans over the years, and it really takes discipline, doesn't it? It does. It does. If you say, I'm going to grow in this, I'm going to hit this target, because we can get off target, can't we? Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like, I really like racquetball. And there was a time in my life when I was really good at it. I got ranked. I was sponsored by a couple of companies, and so I did very well in racquetball at a very young age. But I wasn't disciplined enough to take the time to eat right, to work out, and to practice. I tended to get my racket in my hand, get my gear on, and say, all right, who's next? So what happened is it put me in gameplay situations. But what would happen is I would find myself in a gameplay situation where all of a sudden there was a guy that understood or saw something, a weakness in me, that I really was having a hard time overcoming. But if I would have been disciplined enough, I could have corrected the weakness where now that was not an area he would have been able to beat me. Discipline is necessary because what you do is you shore up the weaknesses, and now they may not be your ultimate strengths, but one thing's for sure, you don't lose in those areas more. Let's talk about this. You bring up weaknesses. 10 years ago, there was a big move in leadership and in personal growth that we needed to focus on all our weaknesses and become better at those. There's been a little shift to where now I know Andy Stanley's book, Next Generation Leader, talks about perfecting our strengths. Yes. And like, for instance, a pastor that has no administrative skills, can't administrate, but he's focusing everything on administration, we tend to wing our preaching because we're good at it. Right. Do you understand what I'm saying? Yes. And we don't do excellence, whereas if we focused and did a personal, grew in that area.
Yeah.
And I think that's the a danger in being generalities, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Being good at, what's the old saying is, he's knows a little bit of everything, but he's a master at nothing.
Yeah, master of nothing. Yep. Mm-hmm.
So a jack of all trades, but master of nothing. So the reality is if we take our strengths and we really focus on that.
Yes.
And maybe, Tina Turner, the singer,
Mm-hmm.
they asked her when she had a split with her husband years ago, she excelled and he didn't. They said, how did you do that? She said, I learned a long time ago that singing was my strengths and I worked on that and I staffed my weaknesses.
Yeah, staff your weaknesses.
Now that takes, let's kind of shift here a little bit. That takes as a leader, that takes a risk again, which is our key word that seems to come up is risk.
Yeah.
Of saying, hey, I'm going to trust this with somebody that's better than me.
Yeah.
And how do we take something that we're good at and perfect it?
You've got to definitely start with staffing your weaknesses.
Mm-hmm.
Look, we all have certain strengths, and some of us have a number of strengths.
Right.
But even if you had let's just say by chance you had a number of strengths. Let's say you were good at this, this, and this. But you've got to say what's one's priority still.
Mm-hmm.
Which one's priority? Because at some point, even though I'm good at them all, I'm still creating a weakness in that chain because I'm not able to perfect my the thing that I'm really called to do the most.
Yeah.
This is why it's necessary, whether you're good or you're weak in it, you still staff those things that you're unable to completely control.
That's good.
And when you can staff those things, what you do is you find people that are capable, and then you have to trust them to do it. And when you do, you'll find that you get more done.
Yeah.
So staff. You can staff your strengths even.
Yeah. And that's a good point as we grow, because I think as leaders, our duties or our sphere of influence grows.
Yes.
And as that grows, then we're able to, some things that we were good at before, now we can release it to somebody else.
There you go. Yes.
And maybe they're just as good, sometimes better.
Yeah.
But we can release that to them. And you think about being prepared and growing. It really takes to perfect whatever the gifting is or the calling is, it really takes a dedication, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
A perseverance too, because my personality, I can get bored.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is okay, I know how to do this, now let's move to the next thing.
Yeah.
But the reality is if we find what we're really good at and what we're called to do, I mean, that really is what it comes down to.
Yeah.
I always had a philosophy, if I can learn it, it's not hard.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So that's okay, but sometimes we learn things and we go, okay, I learned this, now I'm going to move on to something else.
Right.
When we can perfect it.
Yeah.
And that I think is a growth in itself. Is perfecting it is because what we're doing is as we're perfecting our gifting, we're making mistakes.
Yeah.
Life's not all about bells and whistles all the time.
That's right.
So it's that mundane every day, and that's how personal growth is.
Yes.
It's every day.
Every day.
You're sowing seeds for a harvest.
Yeah.
And whether it's a book, a CD, a sermon, a small group, we always have to look at all of them as areas of growth, don't we?
That's right.
Yeah.
I remember I was, of all things, because I don't ever listen to him, but I just happened to catch a highlight. I was flipping through the channels on TV one day, and I saw Chris Rock. He was on a big screen such as this, and he was talking to Oprah Winfrey of all things, and she basically asked him a simple question, at what part in your career did you really get that breakthrough? Because everybody knows how big you are. And he goes, you got to understand, I traveled through the comedy clubs for years.
Yeah. And
he goes, at some point I realized, is this really what I want to do? Do I just want to be a good comedian, or do I want to perfect my craft?
Right.
And he said, when I really made the decision, I want to perfect my craft. I want to not just be good. I want to be the best I can be.
Right.
He said that's when his career really began to take off. Now, like I said, I don't listen to Chris Rock for most of my leadership stuff, but the idea and the concept behind what he was saying is very true, is that if we're going to get better at what we do, and God has given us the opportunity to do it, my opportunity is to be a minister of the gospel and to preach it.
Right.
Well, then I need to take that and I need to make a decision. Do I want to be a good preacher on Sunday just to give enough that people are okay and feel good about themselves? Or do I want to give them something that inspires a fire that they can take it? That means I'm going to have to get better.
Right.
So.
And that's good. That's making that choice.
Yes, it is. It's a choice.
Once we make that choice and we buy into that.
Yeah.
And say, okay, I'm going to become the best at preaching or teaching, whatever the ministry is, then it takes that effort, doesn't it? It takes that push through. It's kind of like in sports. You know, if you're guys that are pro level, you know, the dedication is unmeasurable. I mean,
right.
And it's not just a one-day thing; it's an everyday thing.
That's right.
And that's why I think a lot of people with growth miss it. Is we live in this microwave. I heard a preacher say this one time. He said, "We're in a microwave society with a crock pot God."
Yes.
In other words, you know, the crock pot takes a while to cook something. You know,
yes.
I like to do beans. It takes, you know, a good 5 hours in there, you know, or a roast, whatever it is. Whereas if I put it in the microwave, it's what, 50 seconds.
Instant.
Instant. Yeah. But growth is that crock pot mentality.
Yes.
It's constantly adding to our arsenal. So, you know, again, we've been talking about how to prepare, how to be intentional in our growth, and how to grow as leaders, you know, in our homes or businesses, wherever we're at. And it's that process. It's that, you know, we talk about that crock pot.
Yes.
You know, putting all the ingredients in there and letting them come together.
Yes.
Because sometimes our experiences come together with something we've learned through a mentor, through a sermon or whatever, and it becomes makes sense once it comes together, so to speak.
Yes.
Where we can apply it to our lives. So again, you know, we're going to conclude our podcast today, and I want to thank Paul. Paul has great insight. And how can they get in touch with you again, Paul?
You can reach us at www.powerhousechurch.us, or at 661-334-1700. Please give us some feedback. We'd love for you to go to our website and give us a comment on what portion of this podcast has been valuable to you, and we'd love to hear from you.
Again, you can, as far as Elevate resources, you can also go on to tonyhendley.org. We have a free newsletter that comes out as well as a blog, and you know, live life to the fullest. Make a decision that you're going to learn and be intentional with it, that you can be all you can be for God.
Elevate your life.
Elevate your life. That's right.